So a lot of these time scales are a bit all over the place, obviously, because it was a long time ago. So we'll have had with pancakes down in Panama City. Obviously, so I forgot to mention there, we went to the Grand Ole Opry as well. So we sort of ticked Niagara Falls, and then you're back in, you're back into reality, which is, you've got to go into Gracelands, you've got to go into the Grand Ole Opry, and you've got to tick off those sort of boxes. Dakota Building, New York. So by the time we get down to the bottom, we've done a bit. Both me and Steve, obviously, we've done a bit of bus travel. So we're seeing the States from the bus, from these lots of little bus stops and starts, took around the small towns and in the rural countryside heading down, which is great because I just wanted that. I was more of, and I've always been, I'm a small town, countryside, rural. I've got any interest in the big cities, seeing the big cities like. And, well, I did used to, when I was younger, I was always interested in that, but as I'm getting older, I'm not bothered. But back then, I still always wanted to get to the sort of rural America, And Steve was like sort of, his sort of, he grew up, obviously we both grew up listening to the hard rock, and the heavy metal, but, I was always wanting, for me, it was always about becoming a rock star, to travel, and and recording the recording studio. Well, a lot of musicians, Steve was one of them, was to just basically get women, and party, So Steve was sort of, Steve was your sort of Motley Crue and all that. Where I was doing the Appencraft thing, and I had the hair spiked up, but it was like, we weren't Motley Crue, we were doing the thrash thing. So by the time Steve's saying, like, let's go to Hollywood, Of course, obviously, Hollywood, I'm thinking, obviously, yeah, let's make our way to Hollywood, and let's just start trying to hitch, and just getting there by whatever means, it's all. We've had with pancakes. We're rested. We've been in this down at Panama Beach in January, when there's been no bikini babes about, but we've rested up and acclimatized to the situation, and you're just looking forward the whole time. So, yeah, we start moving. I didn't think even we had a map, I didn't think. Did I have a map? I think I might have carried a little map with it, round with us. We must have had something. And there was a shop, and this is when it was still had money in my pocket. So it was like there was a rural town, but it was doing, it had the American cowboy hats in, and I just picked this up because they were expensive, so I just picked the sort of cheapest, which was like $50, which was a big sort of sting. Steve didn't buy one, like, and I put the fucking hat on, and I said, being Steve, I am an American. I am now an American. And actually, I found out I wore the hat for like a week, and then because of all the walking, it was hot and sweaty wearing it, and it started to droop a bit, and eventually I just fucking tossed it to the side of the road, because it was starting to go a bit sort of Australian outback, rather than this sort of G.R. Ewing, So that went, and so, we're getting a bit scruffier, we're getting tired, but we're excited, and we're in the moment, and we're acclimatizing, and every 24 hours is more confidence. Not that I didn't think either of us needed the confidence. We're just sort of just getting, right, we're here now. Let's just fucking rock and roll, And then when you've got to go like somewhere, you're going somewhere, you're going to Hollywood. Oh, we're going to go to Hollywood, So, we're now sort of discussing, the money's kind of just taking big hits, when we're doing this spend on the Greyhound, the bus. And, and it was obviously the bus was we assumed, I mean, we never checked out, but we assumed that the bus would be cheaper than the train. And the trains are like just sort of big, long stretches. But, you know, I saw like a train yard with lots of, you know, cargo trains in it, you know, that were carrying coal and stuff. And, you know, and obviously I'd been listening to a lot of Woody Guthrie and, you know, and just riding the railroad, you know, the songs, you know, where Woody Guthrie and the old blues guys, well, they were young then, in the 40s and that, in the 50s, 30s even, they would jump on, ride the railroad so they can get free trips across the states. You know, and of course it was dangerous running along the train and then jumping onto this train illegally sort of thing into these cargo trailers, you know. But it was also dangerous because if you got caught, you know, you get beaten up. But, you know, to me that was all just, well, that was then, wasn't it? That's just part of the, you know, that's part of the romanticism of it all. So there was this guy and so we went in and I'm just looking and, oh, that's a good one. That would be, get a good, you know, if that's going to take 2 days to get well to Hollywood, across to Hollywood, I mean, we've got to just keep in there for 2 days like with Woody Guthrie, you know. So this fella comes up, you know, marching up with, you know, so I'm with my Geordie accent, you know. Yeah, right, mate. Can we just want a free lift, you know, we just want to ride the railroad, you know, like Woody Guthrie and that, and the Blue Skies, just sort of to Hollywood. Which one should we jump in? Is it okay? And he was like fucking fuming. He says, you know, I'll not put the accents on. I can do the accents, but I'll not put them on. But he's saying basically, you know, hey man, this is completely illegal. You can't do that. What you're talking about, you know? Can you get the hell out of here? Move, you know? And I'm sorry, mate. You know, just asking. Just thought it'd be. He said, no, man, this is illegal. So we walked away and I thought, you know, so it's still illegal. I just sort of brought the time, you know, the time scale of, I mean, that's the 1990s, and it was like, in a way, it was like being in the 1940s, you know, although we were just asking for permission, you know. I mean, this still goes on now. There's still plenty of people, hobos, you know, riding the railroad. And I was just asking for permission. But I've found in life, if you ever ask for permission for anything, they always say no. So just do it anyway, you know, fuck them. But the idea of running along a train like with a rucksack and trying to jump on it was never going to happen. You know, even though I was still quite young and fit, it was too dangerous. So we walked away from them, and me and Steve's discussing about, you know, this problem of you know, how quick the money's going to go. Of course, I'm thinking about how quick the money's going to go, and Steve's agreeing. Steve's not really letting on, you know, but I sort of worked it out later on, you know. Like, I mean, I've got this one little card in my little wallet, you know, and his traveller's checks, you know, but Steve's got like a fucking whole line of them that he wasn't telling us about, you know, which is fair enough, you know. He didn't want to look like he had too much money because he'd been working for a long time in London, you know. So, but I always thought about later that sort of worrying about the money and puts a really sharp edge on travelling. Like, you know, you have to watch what you're spending, and you're fearful because you're on the other side of the planet compared to, you know, your own country, which is safety. You know, you've got plenty of safety nets, you know, your social securities and all this, and housing and all this, right? So, you know, and you know, you've got all that. See, when you go away from that back in the day, and you've got no money, so but in a way it made it more, you know, that reality of fucking hell, I could be a hobo. Am I a hobo? Am I a hobo now? You know, I probably am. You know, there's probably hobos wandering about the States with more money and travellers checks than I've got on us. You know, so, but you know, I mean, Steve was living it as well, like, you know, having more money than me means nothing if we both, you know, get beaten to death because we've rode the railroad, you know, and gotten fucking mugged or something. And, you know, any sort of dangerous, I don't say beaten to death is a joke. There's it's very fucking dangerous doing what we were doing. And, just traveling about in general, like if you're off the beaten track and even on the beaten track, and you're doing it the real way. It's, you're coming in contact with real, situations with real people. That's like, at times you're in danger, and the times you think you're not in danger, or maybe the times you're in the most danger. I mean, there's certainly plenty of that happened on this trip, on this road movie, and I'll highlight a few of them as I tell the story. So we couldn't get to write. Well, we could have, Woody Guthrie wouldn't have asked; he would have just done it, But a couple of white British lads, we're not that desperate yet. We've still got travellers checks, and Steve's got a few quid stashed away. So, all this is getting jumbled up a bit, but I think it's all within a period of the first, it's all definitely within the period of the first 2 months, like. So all the time we've got this thought of modes of travel. The Greyhound isn't really working for her. We came, so it's out in the rural sticks, obviously, because it's always better for camping. What I noticed as well in the States, you'd see, because it's quite flat, because you think you see a big city like Dallas or Nashville or something like that, and you see them from a distance, as you're traveling in the bus or you're walking or something, and even LA, and all these sort of places. Well, back then, probably not that different now, but you think of these massive, but you'd sort of see them from a distance of maybe like 20 mile or 30 mile, and then it'd be like just a few skyscrapers, and you'd be thinking, well, in a way, it's not really that much. It's not that much bigger than a sort of Newcastle or something. It's just got some skyscrapers there, I just in my mind, I always thought they'd be like massive metropolises, every single one of these air quote cities, Dallas and all this, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the sprawl of them, but the central area is not really, just not that big, like. Anyway, I mean, we're out in the sticks anyway, so rural towns and rural roads. Quite big motorway sort of, big sort of, 2 lanes on that side and 2 lanes on this side. Quite often, so we're out in the sticks. The next sort of thing I remember is, there was a shack, right? There was a shack. So it can't be that, I think this is maybe it's got jumbled up before we got to Panama, actually. But there was a wooden shack, and it was a general store. When I describe this, you can imagine the Wild West. It's a sort of mix between the Wild West and modern times. That's what's going on, like, that's what you're seeing, And so it's a general store. It's just like this wooden shed, big shed sort of, old thing, and maybe it's got an old Coca-Cola metal sign on it, some pots and pans jingling on the other door or something like that, it's sort of a muddy road around it. And it goes into there. There was a woman probably in her 30s, a little girl, a beautiful little girl. She'd maybe be about 5 or 6 or something. And this old fella. So he was the father of the woman, and the little girl was the daughter of the woman. So I'm just, the father is probably, he's off at work or doing something. He's in his pickup truck doing man's work somewhere, probably fucking working in one of the swamps, spearing fucking alligators. So we're there anyway, and obviously we just walk in, and it's like 2 aliens have landed, and I'm just looking about, and I looked up. There's a door on the left. There's this sort of picture, a big a big framed photograph. I mean, it was big, like it was, what, the size of a coffee table size photograph, and it's a black fella hanging by the neck from a tree, and it's a black and white photograph in a frame, and I just looked at it. It didn't register, like it didn't really register, like it would. I think it did with Steve, because Steve was like he was, basically he was a lot more street smart than I was. He would pick up these things straight away. I'm just fucking like Duali, And anyway, it was sort of, and then we're hanging about, and we got some Coca-Cola, and just sort of sitting the boot side. And then the little girl, I'd forgotten about this, but I'd been hair braiding, putting, necklaces and bracelets. I'd been doing that in Spain a couple of years earlier, and I made some really good money doing that. I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we were out in Spain for about 4 or 5 months or something. And, it was really good money. It was Sunday dinners every day, every morning, Sunday dinner, bought pints of lager, and then make a shit ton of money on the night doing this hair braiding, just necklaces and all that out of these threads. And for the tourists and the British tourists, So I've carried threads. I'd forgotten about that, but I've obviously carried threads around with us, because I've thought, if I need money, I can do that. If we're on a resort somewhere, I can do that, and then bosh, back in the money again, which would have been the case. And so I had these on us, and as a sort of friendly gesture, talking to these people. Actually, he might have been given with a Coca-Cola and some bits of food for free, and she sat there, the little guy. I said, "Do you want a bracelet?" And she didn't know. So I said, I put the bracelet on her, and then the fella comes out, granddad, and he looks at us like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And I just say, "I've just done a nice little bracelet there." And she was really chuffed with it, and she went in to show her mum, and he sort of looked at me, and I'm looking at, but he sussed us out, and we went back in, and we're having a little talk. The little girl's, chuffed with a little bracelet, and so it's all smiles. And he's asking where you come. I said, "Oh, well, we're just, a couple of musicians. We've been to Gracelands and been to these places." Actually, I don't even think I mentioned Gracelands. I don't think I said that. No, I hadn't mentioned that. He'd said, and then he started saying, he started telling me about Elvis Presley. He says, I used to go, he was in my college. I was like, wow, and of course Steve was Elvis fan, and big time. And he says, and this old guy says, he pulled up, he says, the fair was, we're having a show in 58. And, it's when they were all young lads drinking. So a country show, He says, Elvis pulls up. He says, "Hey man," he pulled up in this pink Cadillac, and it had Elvis written on the side. And the old fella was saying it in a taking a piss sort of tone, And he'd sprayed on Elvis down the side of his, and he says it wasn't very good. It was very amateur the way it had been done it, and and as he was telling us that, I was thinking in the back of my mind, I thought, fucking hell, I've seen that photograph. Because you think, well, he could be making it up, but no, I mean, obviously it wasn't, and because we're in the area, and so really Elvis was just from this area, he's a rural kid, probably within 20, 30 miles of where we were. So this definitely was before Panama, I think. It's around, anyway, it was all happening. And then he says he's got Elvis's old gun, his hand pistol. He's got that. And just, that was it, And just thought of some other things. So very friendly, very nice. And the little girl was happy with her little bracelet. You know, I probably bought a pack of cigarettes because I was smoking then as well, like still smoking me cigarettes, and still drinking a little bit as well, like still drinking, you know, because I'm like 20, 28 going on 29 or something. Steve's 27 going on 28. So we're still drinking, and I was smoking. Steve wasn't smoking, like. And so thank you very much, and we'll leave the shack, you know, and walk past the photo, hanging up at the door there, you know, and start walking down the road, you know. So they were nice, weren't they? Wasn't they? That was nice. Steve says, "Did you see the photo?" I says, "What, on the thingy, on the wall?" He says, "Aye." He says, "Black man being hung." I says, "Aye," and I never really thought about it, like. She says, "Aye, fucking black man lynched," and he's got a framed photograph, big framed photograph of that on as you go in on the left. And I thought, fucking hell. That's pretty intense, but that's so you're not going to get any blacks scanning there. You're definitely not going to get any blacks whatsoever, you know. So actually, as we were there, because I didn't have my cowboy hat on because I threw it at the side of the road, as we were sort of, he wasn't looking at me and Steve, you know, in a sort of danger. Who are these? He's looking at me and Steve thinking, "Oh, we're mixed race. Is there any Indian and where's there any?" So he would have loved because he knew, you know, Scottish and English pure bloods, you know. So we were welcome, like. So I think walking up the road, me and Steve would have been talking about that, and probably maybe he's just thinking it was a one-off, or maybe he's just sort of saying, "Fucking hell, it's still all happening, isn't it? It's still pretty intense, you know." So further up the road, now I don't know if this happened before this or after this, but a little bit further up the road, you know, out in the sticks, forests and all that, there was another shack, general store, and we sort of stood outside of it, or across the crossroads from it, just looking. And there was these two young black girls that had been about 13, 14, and they were beautiful young black girls, and they had these. I mean, I don't know, it must be must have been fucking warm by then. But they had these very skimpy, flowery dresses on, like short. And I don't even know if they had any shoes on their feet. Probably had sandals, I don't know. But they were coming down the sort of hill a little bit, and they were looking at me, and Steve sort of stood there, probably having a fag, and giggling and looking at me giggling, you know, and obviously going to the general store. And I looked at them and I thought, that's like they're beautiful young girls, and this is like, I'm all of a sudden, like, I really am in a movie now, like. I mean, this is bizarre. And, you know, they just went past, and the way they were giggling, I just thought, is the word getting out that there's this Scottish and this young Scottish and young English lad travelling through? And we sort of later found out that that's exactly what was happening. Like, I don't know how much it was making the news, but apparently it sort of was a little bit, and for the reasons I would explain later. So that was happening. I've just written stuff down, so I'm giving you a colour, literally, of things. We're talking to this. I know that this was this guy who's American, this young lad, and all of a sudden he started speaking English, like Southern English, you know, I was like, fucking hell. And he was just telling me, he says, if you want to stay here, you got to just put on the accent. He says, I've been here 20 years, putting on the accent, nobody knows where I'm from. And we were just fucking, that's fucking hilarious, that. I remember thinking, well, it'd be hard work, like, putting on the accent, putting that fakeness on all the time, you know. So lots more walking, lots more bus rides out in the sticks to stay safe. Little towns, very small little towns are coming through. And, you know, I'm seeing a mixture of black people and I'm seeing a mixture of white people. And I'm not really noticing not really seeing any segregation or anything like that. I've just remembered there, I would have forgotten that. I don't know if this was around here this time, but there was this, it turns out in the States, right, a sort of like a black area and a white area. Like, so a white person will come up and say, you guys don't want to walk up there, that's fucking up there. You know, that's a fucking area, you keep out of there. And, you know, it is quite dangerous. There's a couple of occasions. This one fucking black. This was later though. You know, I think he was a pimp with this last like, and getting irate. You know, that war on his street. You know, I mean, you got to be careful if you're in the cities, especially. You wander on the wrong street. You think it's just, well, this is a black street. That's a white street, and you can just literally walk onto the wrong street. Apparently. Which happened a few times, you know. But, you know, when you're a daft tourist, it was good with Steve, like, because the Scottish always works, like, Scottish works everywhere you can, like, everybody likes the Scottish, you know. But the Geordie sort of can sound a little bit Australian. I was getting that, you know. And that means no to anybody who wants to mug you, like, they'll stop mugging you if they hear that you're Scottish, you know. But not if you're an Australian or something, or a Geordie. That sounds like an Australian. So, you know, we're in these little towns and we're seriously thinking about where's the money coming. You know, this is getting quite exhausting, this walking, like carrying all this rucksack. So, you know, I think I might have said to Steve, well, I did. What about nicking a car? What about stealing a car? And, you know, we're sort of discussing that, you know, if that would be a possibility. Because you'd be walking along these rural roads and that, and you'd see these cars for, like, you know, $400, you know, like, you know, handmade sort of price on the windscreen. And, you know, you'd be thinking, fucking hell, that's only $200 each, that. I can drive, I think, a car and drive motorbikes. How hard can it be, you know? This was fucking tempting, like, you know, because, you know, you buy a car for $400, it could be like in Hollywood that night, you know, possibly. Probably not, like, probably a couple of days drive from where we were. So there was this sort of, I don't know if it was like a sort of, just out of this sort of little town, buildings, sort of wood and brick and that. And we walked in, I was probably looking to see if they sold cigarettes or something, anything, you know, and walked in and it was just empty everywhere. It was like large parking space, but empty, you know. This is out in the sticks, like, and nobody about, very strange. Is it a horse dealership or something? What do they sell you? So, you know, goes into this, open this door, you know, thinking, well, should we be going in here? Like, it's not a shop. Should we even be going in here? So just walked in, opened the door, there's like a counter, and me and Steve stood there and I just, hello, anybody about, like, bizarre. It's like, I mean, this is a big place, like, and how is there absolutely nobody here? Why is the door not locked? And I've just sort of looked down and I've saw like a drawer half open and I can see money, like, I can see a lot of money. And I looked at Steve, I says, look, seen that? And Steve, like, you know, Steve was a risk taker. What Steve was, as well as doing his painting and decorating, he was a wannabe actor. That's why he went to London. Those two things Steve loved was rock and roll when he was a kid and acting, films, right? So, but films really is what he wanted to be an actor, right? So he'd really went to London in his early 20s, maybe his late teens. I don't know exactly how long he was in London, but I think it might have been something like 10 years even. No, maybe he's about 8. And so he's been trying to get, Steve's a dreamer. Steve was a dreamer, right? He's one of them. He would never have become an actor, you know, because he was too much of a dreamer. But, you know, he would, that's why he went to London. I think he maybe tried to apply for a few acting roles, but he would carry a little notepad, because in Steve's mind, you see, he's a struggling actor, and he likes to look at people, and he'll take notes, you see, on how they react to stuff, for future reference for a movie role. You know, if he gets a movie role as somebody who's like, works in a rustic shed general store with lynching photographs on his wall, you can remember that character, you know. So he would always be writing notes down, like Steve. So anything that involved real danger, danger of life, and it wasn't just excitement for Steve. It was reference, right? It's gone down in his notepad, right? It's not that Steve didn't know fear. Steve knew fear, but the most important thing was he got it written down, or at least he got some sort of memory of it in his brain. For when he gets, well, in this case, when he gets to Hollywood, gets his first film role, and he can draw on that, right? So we're looking at each other, and the drawer's half open. It's got the money in, and yeah, I can see Steve's face. He's thinking, this is Hollywood blockbuster fucking stuff. This, like, the notepad's coming out, And fortunately, I didn't, and Steve didn't. Right? I said, "Come on, let's go, let's get out of here." And I think Steve might have been saying, "Well, we should have, And I'm seeing this fucking car across the road for $400, another one. And I'm saying, nah, man, but it's like fucking, it just seemed too easy, It seemed too easy, Everything was it was like a trap, This is now second. But I mean, I don't know, the thing is, nobody steals stuff, right? You maybe steal a little bits and pieces when you're a child, just being a bit naughty. Everybody, well, most people do that. Like Carl Pilkington with his Mars bars, that sort of thing, or the odd Matchbox car. But you don't steal when you get older, and because what goes on comes on. It's karma, isn't it? But the thing is, when you do get desperate, you do steal. You will steal if you've got no money, and you feel you've got to survive. You'll steal, and I'll say that everybody. You mightn't think you will, but you will. You've just never been in that situation before. It's nothing special, anybody. You will steal if you've got nothing, or you in danger of having nothing. And because the most important thing is that you got to eat. You got to eat and you got to drink. You'll not steal for cigarettes. You'll not steal. Well, some people will, or a drug or an alcohol. Yeah, so, yeah, absolutely. Some people do that. For me, I would steal you know, if I thought I was going to get hungry, you know. So that would probably be like 90% of people in general. But I'm walking away and saying, no, you know, that wasn't going to happen, you know. So, and I definitely felt like it was going to be a trap anyway. But you know, it's not good, is it? I mean, it's people's stuff, isn't it? So we're walking into the next town. Which is just up the road, gagging for a beer. Both were gagging for a beer. Of course, Steve would pace himself with a beer. I didn't know what that meant, you know. But I didn't know what pace yourself meant. And so we're going to the town, and there was this fella gets out his car, like a GRU and type of thing. And I was asking him where the bar is. Where's the nearest bar, you know, we need a drink, you know. He says, hey man, he says, this is a dry town. And me and Steve's like, what do you mean? He says, we don't sell alcohol around here. This is a dry town. If you wanna have a drink of alcohol, you've got to, and he's pointing, you know, he says, and then he's saying the next town. He says, this is a dry town. All right, okay then, okay. So it goes into this cafe, and we're having just sort of coffee and that, and a bit of food and chatting. And then this fella comes in again, and he comes in and he's like dead loud, and he's talking, and he's like completely takes over the whole room, and you know, he's the center of attention. And didn't, you know, I was just sort of thinking, what a character, you know. And as he left, you know, Steve Gans, Elvis has left the building, and I'm just thinking, this is just endless characters, you know, endless characters. It's brilliant. It's brilliant, and I'm having me fucking me morals tested. I'm having me whole personality is on the line, and I'm learning about America, but I'm learning about myself, my limits. You know, it's just this is traveling. This is traveling. But we're probably sat there, me and Steve, talking how we're going to solve the transport issue, because thieving is out of the question. Even if we buy the car with the cash that we've got on with some car, you know, if we get stopped by the police, that's fucking jail time, that. That's not just thrown out the country, like, that's proper. We knew that, like. The hitching wasn't happening, like, in the States. We thought we'd be getting a lot. We got loads of hitches up in Canada later on, like, but that wasn't happening. And so basically this whole time we've been traveling, heading west, and across the first few states there, you know, at the top of Florida, and swamplands and stuff, and these rural places, you know, and you know, we really needed to make some. We're coming up to Alabama, Mississippi next, and this would have been in my mind. So I'm thinking, Steve, I says, what about cycling? And Steve was cycling. I says, bicycle. I says, it's because I'd always been on a bicycle. You know, as a kid, I lived on my bicycle. I was one of them kids, you know. I says, cycling, man, it's free. We'll just get a couple of bicycles, get to a bicycle shop. We'll get a couple of bicycles for like second-hand ones for peanuts. You know, the bicycle takes the weight of all the gear, so we're not carrying these rucksacks. And we'll cover loads of miles. It's not mountains down here, you know. It's rolling, it's not flat, but it's doable. And Steve's like, well, you know, I haven't been on a bicycle since I was about 12. I says, well, I know it's easy, you know, you just cycle, you know. I says, we're coming to Alabama, let's cycle through Alabama and Mississippi. And Steve's just going, well, I reckon we'll give that a shot, you know.